The sound of excited squeals and laughter drifted up from our driveway, cutting through the quiet of Christmas morning. I stood at the kitchen window, coffee mug warming my hands, watching my younger sister Tessa jump up and down beside a brand new red Volkswagen Beetle, complete with an enormous silver bow on top. My parents beamed as they handed her the keys, their faces glowing with pride. My name is Lila, and this was the moment I realized I'd always be the afterthought in my family story. "Oh my God, I can't believe you guys did this." Tessa's voice carried through the glass. She was already sitting in the driver's seat, running her hands over the steering wheel like it was made of gold. I glanced at the stack of scratch-off lottery tickets sitting on the counter, my modest Christmas gifts to everyone. They hadn't even bothered to open them yet. The tickets had been all I could afford after putting every spare penny into my culinary school applications, but trying to explain that to my family would have been pointless. They'd made their opinions about my hobby clear enough. "Lila." My mother's voice startled me. She was standing in the doorway, still wearing her coat. "Why aren't you outside with everyone? Come see your sister's car." I forced a smile. "Just finishing my coffee, Mom." She frowned, that familiar look of disappointment crossing her face. "You could try being happy for her, you know. This is a big moment."
Right.
"Because I'm the one who makes everything about myself." The words slipped out before I could stop them. "Don't start," she warned. "Not today." I bit my tongue and watched her head back outside. Through the window, I could see my father showing Tessa how to adjust her mirrors, wearing the proud smile I'd never managed to earn. Not when I made honor roll, not when I won the regional cooking competition, not even when I got accepted to culinary school, before they refused to help with tuition. My hand drifted to the lottery tickets. Out of habit, I started scratching off the numbers on one, not really paying attention until something caught my eye. 3 matching numbers. My heart started racing as I double-checked the winning combinations. $50,000. I stared at the ticket, my hands shaking. With this money, I could afford culinary school. I could start building my dream of opening my own restaurant. I could finally prove to everyone that my hobby was worth something. But this ticket was meant to be a gift. The right thing would be to give it to them. Watch them celebrate another stroke of luck that would probably go toward Tessa's college fund or a family vacation I wouldn't be invited on. Outside, Tessa honked the horn playfully, and my parents laughed. None of them had even noticed I wasn't there. I made my decision in that moment. Carefully, I folded the winning ticket and slipped it into my pocket. The rest of the scratch-offs, I gathered up and dropped in the recycling bin. They wouldn't miss what they hadn't bothered to open. "Lila." My father's voice boomed from outside. "Get out here and take a family picture." I walked to the front door, but paused with my hand on the knob. Through the window, I could see them clustered around the car, their breath visible in the cold December air. They looked complete without me, the perfect family of 3. "Coming," I called back, but instead of joining them, I headed upstairs to my room. I had a laptop open to apartment listings within an hour, the winning ticket tucked safely in my wallet. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting out. And thanks to their forgotten Christmas gift, I finally had my chance. The key felt heavy in my hand as I unlocked the door to my new apartment. It wasn't much, a studio above a Thai restaurant downtown, but it was mine. The smell of lemongrass and garlic wafted up through the floorboards, making my stomach growl despite everything. 3 weeks had passed since Christmas, and my phone was still lighting up with missed calls from home. I'd left a note explaining I needed space, but that hadn't stopped the barrage of texts from my mother, each one more guilt-laden than the last. "You're being selfish, Lila. Your sister needs you right now." I dropped my duffel bag on the bare mattress in the corner and started unpacking the few kitchen items I'd brought: my knife roll, a well-seasoned cast-iron pan, and the basic essentials. The winning lottery ticket was safely deposited, the money already allocated for culinary school tuition and this apartment's security deposit. A knock on my door made me freeze. Had they somehow found me? "Hello? New tenant." The voice was unfamiliar, heavily accented. "I'm Marco from downstairs." I opened the door to find a tall man in chef's whites, his salt and pepper hair tied back in a short ponytail. The name on his jacket read, "Executive Chef." "I noticed someone moving in," he said, gesturing to my boxes. Wanted to introduce myself. We try to keep a family atmosphere here. The word family made me wince, but something about his warm smile put me at ease. My eyes caught on the knife roll visible through my open door. "You cook?" he asked, following my gaze. "I try to. I'm actually starting culinary school next month." His eyes lit up. "No kidding? We're short-staffed downstairs. Could use someone who knows their way around a kitchen, even part-time." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. My father's name flashed on the screen. "Complicated situation?" Marco asked, noting my expression. "You could say that." He nodded thoughtfully. "Listen, come down tomorrow morning if you're interested. Sometimes the best therapy is keeping your hands busy and your knives sharp." After he left, I finally listened to my father's voicemail. His voice was gruff, angry. "Your mother's upset, and Tessa's grades are slipping. Whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. Time to grow up and come home." I deleted the message and opened my laptop, pulling up the culinary school website. The first term's tuition was due next week. My finger hovered over the submit payment button when another text came through, this time from Tessa. "Mom and Dad are freaking out. Where are you? I'm worried." This one hurt more than the others. Tessa and I might not have been close, but she wasn't responsible for our parents' behavior. Still, I couldn't risk telling her the truth. She'd never been able to keep secrets from our parents. "I'm safe," I typed back. "Just need some time." The next morning, I found myself in Marco's kitchen, chopping vegetables with more focus than necessary. The rhythmic motion was soothing, familiar. Marco worked beside me, occasionally offering tips on technique. "You have good instincts," he said, watching me adjust the heat under a simmering sauce. "But you're angry. It shows in your cooking. Is that a bad thing?" He shrugged. "Depends what you do with it. Anger can fuel passion or destroy it. The difference is in the control." My phone buzzed in my pocket, another text from my mother. I ignored it. "The people who hurt us," Marco continued, testing the sauce with a spoon. "They don't suffer when we let them consume our thoughts. They don't even know. The only one who suffers is us." I thought about the lottery ticket, about my silent escape. Sometimes they need to learn they can't take people for granted. Perhaps. He handed me the spoon. "But make sure your revenge doesn't become your purpose. Taste this." "What's missing?" I sampled the sauce, considering. "Salt. And maybe a touch of acid." He smiled. "Exactly. Balance is everything. In cooking and in life." The kitchen door swung open, and a server rushed in. "Chef, there's a woman out front asking about Lila. Says she's her mother." My heart stopped. Through the kitchen window, I could see her scanning the dining room, Tessa trailing behind her like a shadow. Marco looked at me questioningly. "Back door through the alley," he said quietly. "But remember, you can't run forever. Eventually, you have to stand your ground and serve what you've prepared." I nodded, already untying my apron. The real test wasn't in running away, it was in choosing when to stay and fight. 3 months into culinary school, I finally felt like I was finding my rhythm. Between morning classes, afternoon shifts at Marco's restaurant, and late nights planning my own future kitchen, I barely had time to think about my family. That should have been my first warning that everything was about to implode. I was prepping for dinner service when Amelia walked into Marco's kitchen. My old friend from high school cooking club, now a rising star chef at one of the city's top restaurants. She looked exactly as I remembered. Perfectly styled hair, crisp chef's whites, and that smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Lila Hawkins," she said, leaning against the prep table. "I heard rumors you were working here, but I couldn't believe it. Shouldn't you be running your own place by now?" I kept chopping vegetables, maintaining the steady rhythm Marco had taught me. Still learning. Not all of us had parents paying our way through Le Cordon Bleu. Speaking of parents. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through something. "I ran into your mom at that charity dinner last week. She seemed worried about you." My knife slipped, nearly catching my finger. "You talked to my mother? She mentioned something about you stealing money and running away? Pretty dramatic, even for you." The kitchen suddenly felt too hot, too small. That's not what happened. No. She raised an eyebrow. Because I also heard from some investors, I know that you've been shopping around a business plan for a restaurant. Interesting timing, considering. My hands were shaking now. What do you want, Amelia? Want? I'm just concerned about my old friend. Starting a restaurant takes more than just money, you know. It takes connections, reputation, stability. She emphasized the last word. Would be a shame if potential investors heard rumors about where your startup capital really came from. Before I could respond, Marco's voice boomed from the doorway. Everything okay in here? Amelia's smile turned syrupy sweet. Just catching up with an old friend. Actually, I came to talk business, Chef Marco. My restaurant is hosting a pop-up event next month, featuring promising new talent. We'd love to have Lila participate. Marco looked at me, but I couldn't meet his eyes. I'll let her think about it, he said firmly. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have service to prepare for. After Amelia left, I gripped the edge of the prep table, trying to steady myself. She's going to tell everyone, I whispered. The investors, my family. Tell them what? Marco asked quietly. I told him everything. The lottery ticket, my escape, the carefully constructed plans now threatening to collapse. He listened without judgment, then handed me a towel to wipe my hands. So now you have a choice, he said. You can run again, or you can face this head-on. How? She'll destroy everything I've worked for. Will she? He picked up my knife, testing its edge. Or will she just expose what you've been afraid to face? Sometimes our biggest fears are just shadows, Lila. They disappear when we shine a light on them. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. It was a screenshot of an email, presumably from Amelia to potential investors, detailing concerns about my financial irregularities and family issues. The pop-up event, Marco continued, could be an opportunity. Show everyone, Amelia, your family, these investors, exactly who you are and what you can do. Or it could be a trap. Most likely both. He smiled. But you're not that scared girl from Christmas morning anymore. You've learned more than just cooking techniques in my kitchen. I thought about the past 3 months, the burns, the cuts, the late nights perfecting recipes. Each small victory had built something inside me that went beyond culinary skills. What's that saying you always use? I asked. The hottest fires make the strongest steel? He nodded. And you, my dear, are about to walk through fire. I picked up my knife and resumed chopping, each cut precise and purposeful. Amelia thought she could use my past to destroy my future. But she'd forgotten the most important rule of the kitchen. Timing is everything. And maybe it was finally time to stop running and start fighting back. Tell her I'm in, I said, for the pop-up event. But I'm doing it my way. Marco's smile turned knowing. Now, that sounds like a chef talking. The text from Tessa came at 3 a.m. Can you meet me? Please? Don't tell Mom and Dad. I found her sitting in her Volkswagen Beetle outside Marco's restaurant, her eyes red and swollen. She'd lost weight since Christmas, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. I failed 2 classes, she said as I slid into the passenger seat. And I can't tell them. They think I'm applying to pre-med programs, but I haven't even started the applications. The heater hummed softly, filling the silence between us. This was the car that had symbolized everything wrong with our family dynamic. Now it felt like a confession booth. Why pre-med? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Dad's dream. Mom's backup plan. My personal nightmare. She laughed, but it came out more like a sob. How'd you do it, Lila? Just walk away from their expectations. I thought about the lottery ticket hidden in my apartment, about Amelia's threats, about all the lies tangled up in my supposed courage. I'm not sure I'm the best person to ask about making good choices right now. At least you made a choice. She pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from her jacket. I found this in Mom's study. She's been tracking your movements, talking to people around town. She knows about the culinary school. My stomach dropped. Does she know about the money? Not yet. But she's obsessed with figuring out how you're paying for everything. Tessa hesitated. She thinks you're involved in something illegal. Dad's talking about hiring a private investigator. The irony wasn't lost on me. In trying to escape their control, I'd given them even more reason to interfere in my life. There's more, Tessa continued. I overheard Mom talking to Amelia Stone's mother at the country club. They're planning something for that pop-up event, some kind of intervention or confrontation. They want to save you from yourself or whatever. My hands clenched into fists. Of course Amelia would involve our mothers. She knew exactly how to twist the knife. You should tell them the truth, Tessa said quietly. About everything. Like you're telling them the truth about pre-med? She flinched, and I immediately regretted the words. We were both trapped in different versions of the same cage. Maybe, Tessa's voice wavered. Maybe we could help each other? I could come to your pop-up event, run interference with Mom. And you could help me figure out how to tell them about changing my major. To what? Photography. She pulled out her phone, showing me a gallery of stunning food photos. I've been practicing at restaurants around town. That's actually how I found out where you were working. The images were beautiful, playing with light and shadow, capturing the essence of each dish. They were nothing like our mother's rigid, perfectionist approach to everything. These are incredible, Tess. Really? Because sometimes I think I'm just being stupid and selfish, throwing away a real career for something you love? I finished. Yeah, I know that feeling. A car drove past, its headlights sweeping across us. For a moment, I saw us as we really were, two sisters, both running from the same shadows, just in different directions. I have to be at the restaurant in 3 hours, I said. Want to come in? I could teach you some plating techniques, give you something interesting to photograph. She smiled, a real smile, not the perfect one she used for her parents. I'd like that. As we walked into Marco's kitchen, I realized something had shifted. The revenge I'd been seeking wasn't just about proving my parents wrong anymore. It was about breaking a cycle, about creating space for both Tessa and me to become something other than what our parents demanded. But first, I had to survive Amelia's pop-up event. And now, knowing our mothers were involved, the stakes were higher than ever. This wasn't just about my future anymore, it was about Tessa's too. Hey, I said, handing her an apron. Want to learn how to make Mom's favorite dessert? I have some ideas for improving it. Tessa's grin turned mischievous. Now that sounds like a photo opportunity. The pop-up event was 3 days away when everything started falling apart. I was in Marco's kitchen, finalizing my menu, when Tessa burst through the back door, clutching her phone. You need to see this, she said, thrusting the screen at me. It was Amelia's Instagram story. A beautifully plated dish that looked exactly like my signature recipe, the one I'd been developing for months. The caption read, "Sneak peek of our upcoming showcase. Sometimes the best innovations come from unexpected places." My hands trembled as I wiped them on my apron. She's been watching me. Someone's been feeding her information. That's not all. Tessa swiped to another post, a series of photos from a private investor meeting at Amelia's restaurant. In the background of one shot, I could see my mother sitting at the table, her face animated in conversation. The knife I'd been holding clattered against the cutting board. She's working with Mom? I overheard them yesterday. Mom's been telling potential investors about your unstable behavior and questionable finances. They're trying to make sure no one backs your restaurant plans. Marco appeared beside us, his expression grim. The health inspector just called. Someone filed multiple complaints about our kitchen. They're coming tomorrow, right before your big prep day. The timing wasn't a coincidence. Amelia knew exactly how to hurt me, using my own mother as a weapon. The room started spinning, and I gripped the edge of the prep table. I can't do this, I whispered. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm in over my head.
No.
Tessa's voice was firm. That's exactly what they want you to think. But look at this. She pulled up her camera roll, showing me photos she'd taken during our late-night cooking sessions. The images were stunning, capturing not just the food, but the passion and creativity behind each dish. This is who you are, Lila. Not their lies, not their manipulation. This. Marco picked up my fallen knife, testing its edge the way he always did when making a point. You know what separates a good chef from a great one? not talent, not even creativity. It's what they do when everything goes wrong. But she stole my recipe. So make a better one. He handed me the knife. Show them who you really are, not who they think you are. I looked at the knife in my hand, remembering all the nights I'd practiced until my cuts were perfect. All the burns and scars earned through determination rather than natural talent. Amelia might have stolen my recipe, but she couldn't steal my passion. Tessa, I said slowly, how good are you at social media marketing?
She grinned.
Better than Amelia, that's for sure.
Good.
Because I have an idea. I turned to Marco. Remember that fusion dish we talked about? The one that combines Mom's traditional family recipe with modern techniques. He nodded, a smile spreading across his face. The one that's too risky? Too controversial.
Exactly.
Amelia wants to play it safe, stick to stolen classics. Let's give them something they can't copy, something that tells our whole story on a plate. I spent the next hours recreating my mother's signature dish, but with each element transformed. The familiar comfort food of my childhood twisted into something new, something that spoke of both tradition and rebellion. Tessa documented every step, her camera capturing the evolution from old to new. When the final plate was ready, even Marco looked impressed. This isn't just food, he said. This is your declaration of independence. Tessa posted the photos with a simple caption. Some recipes are passed down. Others are transformed. Coming soon to at Amelia Stone's showcase event. Within hours, the post went viral in the local food community. Amelia called twice, then texted, "You're making a mistake. Back down now, or everything comes out about the money, about your family, everything." I showed the text to Tessa and Marco, my hands steady for the first time all day. "Let it come out," I said. "I'm done hiding." Marco nodded approvingly. "Now you're cooking with fire." "Just promise me one thing," Tessa said, lowering her camera. "When you face them, all of them, let me be there. Someone needs to document what happens when the golden child and the black sheep finally stand together." The pop-up event was no longer just about revenge or proving myself. It was about breaking free from all the recipes others had written for my life and finally creating my own. The night of the pop-up event arrived with the subtlety of a kitchen fire. I stood in Amelia's prep kitchen, surrounded by other young chefs, all of us competing for the attention of potential investors. My station had been accidentally placed next to a drafty service door, my burners mysteriously running cold. "Equipment issues?" Amelia's voice dripped with false concern as she passed by. "Such a shame. But then, working with subpar tools builds character, doesn't it?" I kept my eyes on my prep work, trying to ignore how she'd positioned my mother at a prominent table directly in my line of sight. Evelyn Hawkins sat there like a queen at court, wearing her judgmental expression like a crown. 10 minutes to first service, someone called out. My hands shook as I reached for my sauce, only to find the container empty. I'd filled it just minutes ago, had turned my back for only a moment. Looking for something? Amelia held up a familiar container. "Oh, this? Found it by the sink. Looked spoiled, so I tossed it. Health and safety, you know? 3 months of work, gone in an instant." I gripped my knife so hard my knuckles turned white, remembering Marco's words about control under pressure. But this wasn't just pressure. This was calculated destruction. "Lila." Tessa appeared at my station, camera in hand. "Mom's talking to the investors. She's showing them something on her phone." My stomach dropped. Through the service window, I could see my mother gesturing animatedly, the investors' faces growing serious as they looked in my direction. One of them stood up, shaking his head, and walked out. "It's the lottery ticket," Tessa whispered. "They know." The room started spinning. Everything I'd built, every careful step toward independence, was crumbling. Without investors, without my signature sauce, without Chef Hawkins. A voice cut through my panic. "Health Department. We need to discuss some concerning allegations about your food handling practices." Of course. The final nail in the coffin. I looked around the kitchen, at Amelia's triumphant smile, at my mother's satisfied expression, at the other chefs pointedly avoiding eye contact. This was what total defeat felt like. I'm done, I said quietly, untying my apron. They win. No. Tessa grabbed my arm. Remember what you told me about Mom's recipe? About making it your own? So your sauce is gone. Make something better. Something they can't steal or destroy. With what? I have nothing left. You have me. She pulled out her phone, showing me the photos she'd taken of our late-night cooking sessions. And you have this. The last photo stopped me short. It was me in Marco's kitchen, laughing as I experimented with a failed dish that had accidentally turned into something amazing. Something entirely new. Sometimes the best dishes come from disasters. Marco had said that night. I looked at my nearly empty station, at the basic ingredients that remained, at my sister's determined face, at my mother, who was now walking toward us with that familiar expression of disappointment. Lila, she started. This has gone far enough. It's time to. You're right. I cut her off, reaching for my knife. It has gone far enough. Tessa, start filming. What are you doing? Amelia demanded as I began rapidly chopping the few ingredients I had left. I'm cooking, I said, my knife moving with purpose. But not your way, or Mom's way, or anyone else's way. My way. I had 20 minutes until service. No sauce, no investors, no support except for my sister's camera and my own shaking hands. Everything I'd planned was in ruins, but maybe that was the point. Maybe I needed to lose everything I thought. I wanted to find what I actually needed. Last call for plating, someone announced. I looked at my creation. Simple, honest, born from desperation and defiance. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even what I'd planned, but it was authentically mine. Ready? Tessa asked, her camera focused on my hands. I nodded, picking up the first plate. Through the service window, I could see the remaining investors waiting, my mother among them. This was it, my last chance to prove that sometimes the worst moments can lead to the best creations. Time to serve, I said, pushing through the door. And I hope they're hungry for the truth. The silence in the dining room was deafening as I presented my improvised dish. Through Tessa's camera lens, I watched the investors lean forward, their expressions shifting from skepticism to curiosity. My mother's face remained carefully blank, but her hands betrayed her nervousness, twisting her napkin beneath the table. This isn't what was advertised, one investor said, studying the plate. No, I agreed. It's better. This is what happens when someone tries to sabotage your carefully planned menu. You either give up, or you create something new. I locked eyes with Amelia, who had emerged from the kitchen. Would you like to explain why my original sauce disappeared? Or should we ask my mother about the convenient timing of the health inspector's visit? Lila, my mother warned, but I wasn't finished. You know what's funny? I spent years trying to recreate your recipes, Mom. Trying to earn your approval. But tonight, when everything was taken away, I finally understood something. The best dishes come from hunger. Real hunger, not just for food, but for recognition. For acceptance. The investors were sampling the dish now, their murmurs of appreciation growing louder. Tessa moved around the table, capturing their reactions, the way they gestured to each other with raised eyebrows and nodding heads. This is unexpected, the lead investor said. The fusion of traditional and modern techniques, the balance of flavors. It tells a story. That's because it's my story, I said. Not the one they wanted me to tell, but the real one. About making something from nothing. About turning rejection into fuel. Amelia stepped forward, her composure cracking. You think you're so special? Some scrappy underdog who… No. I cut her off. I think I'm exactly what you're afraid of, someone who doesn't need your approval anymore. Any of you. My father chose that moment to walk in, stopping short at the scene before him. I hadn't seen him since Christmas morning, and his presence sent a jolt through the room. What's going on here? He demanded. Your daughter, the lead investor said, is about to receive an offer of backing for her restaurant concept. That is, if she's interested. The look on my father's face shifted from confusion to something else. Something I'd never seen before. Recognition, maybe. Or regret. The lottery ticket, he said quietly. That's how you did all this, isn't it? The one you gave us for Christmas. The one you never bothered to open. I corrected. Yes. My mother stood up abruptly. You had no right. To what, Mom? To want something different than what you planned? To succeed without your permission? I gestured to Tessa, still filming. Ask your golden child how she feels about medical school. Ask her what she really wants to do with her life. The room fell silent again as all eyes turned to Tessa. She lowered her camera, her hands steady even as her voice shook. I want to be a photographer, she announced. And Lila's going to hire me to shoot for her restaurant's marketing. You're hiring no one, Amelia snapped. This was a publicity stunt. These investors are very impressed, the lead investor interrupted. Both with the food and with how you handle unexpected challenges, Miss Hawkins. My father stepped forward, reaching into his jacket. He pulled out a wrinkled scratch-off ticket, the one I'd given him for Christmas. It was still unscratched. I kept it, he said. Don't know why. Maybe because it was the last thing you gave us before. He cleared his throat. I'd like to scratch it now, if that's okay. And whatever it's worth, I want to invest it in your restaurant. Roger. My mother protested, but he held up his hand. No, Evelyn. We've done enough damage trying to control their lives. Look at what Lila created tonight, when everything was stacked against her. Look at Tessa's photography. These aren't the failures we feared. These are artists. The investor smiled, sliding a business card across the table. I believe we have some details to discuss, Miss Hawkins. All of us. I picked up the card, then looked at my father's unscratched ticket.
Keep it, I said.
Some gifts are worth more unopened. Amelia stormed out, but I barely noticed. I was too busy watching my father's face as he finally saw me, not as a disappointment, but as a chef, as myself. So, I said, turning to the investors, let's talk about opening night. 6 months after the pop-up event, I stood in my own kitchen, watching the dinner service unfold through the pass. The restaurant was packed, as it had been every night since opening. Tessa's photographs lined the walls, artistic shots of our signature dishes alongside candid moments of our family's journey. The door swung open and Marco walked in, carrying a familiar envelope. Special delivery, he said, handing it to me. Found this at my restaurant. The return address was Amelia's. Inside was a single page. I closed my restaurant last week. Turns out success isn't worth much when you build it on other people's recipes. You were right. The hunger has to be your own. I folded the letter, thinking about how revenge had stopped tasting sweet somewhere along the way. Have you seen today's special? I asked Marco, nodding toward a dish waiting at the pass. He smiled, recognizing my mother's signature recipe, reimagined, but with its heart intact. How did she take it? She cried. I admitted, then spent an hour telling me everything I'd done wrong while secretly eating every bite. Through the kitchen window, I could see my family at their regular table. My father was showing Tessa something on her camera, probably discussing her upcoming gallery show. My mother sat straight-backed as always, but her eyes kept drifting to the kitchen with something that looked almost like pride.
Chef.
One of my line cooks called out, "We have a situation." I turned to find a familiar face at the kitchen door, Amelia, looking smaller somehow, less certain. I'm not here to cause trouble, she said quickly. I wanted to know if you're still hiring prep cooks. The kitchen fell silent, everyone watching for my reaction. 6 months ago, I would have savored this moment of defeat. Now, looking at her, I saw something of myself, that same hunger, just pointed in the wrong direction for too long. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., I said. Don't be late.
And Amelia?
Bring your own recipes this time. She nodded, a flash of relief crossing her face before she hurried out. Marco squeezed my shoulder. You're not the same chef who burned with revenge in my kitchen. No, I agreed. I'm better. Speaking of which, I pulled out the lottery ticket my father had kept unscratched all these months. He'd given it back to me last week, saying some gifts needed to come full circle. Want to do the honors? I offered it to Marco. He shook his head. Some things are worth more unscratched. The mystery of what could have been sometimes teaches us more than knowing. The dinner rush was picking up, tickets streaming in. I tucked the ticket into my chef's coat, where it settled next to my heart like a reminder of how far I'd come. Lila, Tessa called from the dining room. Mom's critiquing your plating again. I laughed, reaching for my knife. Tell her if she wants to reorganize my garnishes, she'll have to put on an apron and do it herself. To my surprise, moments later, my mother appeared in the kitchen doorway, already rolling up her sleeves. Well, she said, are you going to show me how this new version of my recipe works or not? I handed her an apron, watching as she tied it with practiced movements that mirrored my own. Some wounds heal slowly, I realized, but they do heal, especially when seasoned with time and truth and just a pinch of forgiveness. Okay, Mom, I said, making space in my station. Let me show you how hunger makes everything taste better. The kitchen hummed around us, a symphony of sizzling pans and clicking plates and calling tickets. My restaurant, my rules, my family, both the one I was born into and the one I'd built. Not perfect, but perfectly mine. And somewhere in my chef's coat, an unscratched ticket reminded me that sometimes the best revenge isn't serving a cold dish, it's inviting your enemies to a warm table and teaching them how to cook for themselves.